Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this is going to be a brief little review for Sword Art Online, episode 19. We are thrust right back into the action again in this episode. Of course, we're picking up right where we left off, with Leafa and Kirito continuing underground. They were talking about this in the last episode, that they'd have to cross caverns underground, stuff like that. And I forget if they said they'd have to deal with the salamanders in that area, but the salamanders we do see in this episode, and to quite a disturbing degree, in fact. But before I get ahead of myself, essentially what I love about the beginning of this is we're seeing Kirito testing out magic, and I just love how this builds up very quickly in this episode. Of course, he's starting out with this sort of illumination magic, this illusionary magic that, Spriggans, his particular race in this game, are in control of. And I love how Leafa kind of mocks him a little bit. And we also get to see some of Leafa's magic being a sylph. She uses this sort of illusionary magic where she creates a stone wall. When they think they're being followed, Yui basically warns them something is coming behind them, and it calls back to that bat tracer we saw at the end of the last episode. And I was really dying to know who was behind this, whether this was going to relate to Sugo or not, and of course it didn't. It actually related to Sigurd, who is a sylph that's slightly higher up on the totem pole than Leafa, and Leafa and Kirito get cornered. He wants to just go full-on battle mode. He has been dealing with stuff like this before. We see that he calls back instinctively, I think, to his brain processes when he was in SAO. Nobody is going to die under my watch. And he even says that to Leafa. He asks her very plain-statedly, will you stay behind and heal me while I fight these guys? And I have to say, I really love the way they depict the casting of magic, the, words that circle around you as you are casting and you have to call out those words. It's just very mystical and very beautiful. It calls back to me many memories of playing Final Fantasy when you see Leafa casting that healing magic, or when you see the enemy forces, the enemy salamanders, as I mentioned earlier, casting their sort of inflammatory fireball magic, that kind of stuff. It's just very awesome to see elfin-looking language surrounding them and lights, and just very mystical, very cool. And that whole action sequence was just awesome. Of course, Kirito got his ass handed to him, and Leafa had to, basically use almost all of her magic to heal him. And then finally, Yui comes up with a brilliant strategy, and here's where my jaw just dropped. It just got intense. He basically casts this spell where he becomes this gigantic, wolfen monster, and just starts eating and tearing into these enemy forces on the salamander side that have them cornered. And I just started chuckling. I was watching this awestruck, It was just brilliant. It was so awesome to see Kirito come into his own with this magic to take out the enemy forces. And when he gets to that last one, Leafa pleads with him, don't kill him, we need answers, that kind of stuff. And he lets the guy drop to the ground. And here's where we see the smooth, slick Kirito that we've seen a while ago. It's been a little while since we've seen this side of him where he strikes up a deal. You know what? I'm going to give you some really swank items if you answer my questions. And I absolutely just laughed my ass off. Loved it. Now, continuing on from there, we have a nice little respite where they basically, Leafa figures out that she's been getting messages from Recon once again, and Recon has suddenly gone silent, so she's wondering what is going on. What is so urgent that he needs to warn her about? She got that message from him before they ever got attacked by the salamanders, so it has her wondering. She ends up logging out, and she calls, because, obviously she knows him in real life, and he outlines this whole sinister, just dastardly plan that's going on between Sigurd and the salamanders. He has apparently sold out their sylphan leader, and essentially is planning on attacking them when they're trying to make a sort of peaceful accord between the sylph and the Kate Sith. And as we know, this calls back to what Sugo's plan is. As long as none of these races will kind of get into a peaceful mindset and work together, there is no way any of them will ever get up the life tree, will ever be able to best this game. They will all constantly be in a sort of civil war. And I think of it as a civil war because they are all different races, yes, but they're all populating the same world, or same country, if you will, in a manner of speaking. speaking. And so it's very much like a civil war, and that's what Sugo wants to keep happening. He wants this to be a perpetual thing that never becomes a goal that, people will team up together and accomplish something toward, and that is beating this game. And so the idea that we have Sigurd here, whether he's working with Sugo or whether it's purely, selfish reasons, he is trying to create havoc, keep that perpetual war going between the races, and that really does lead me to suspect that somehow it's related to Sugo, whether that is Sugo in another disguise or whether it's somebody, an underling of his, I don't know if it even has any relation to do with him at all. But that was his chief thing that he seemed to want in his discussion with Asuna a couple episodes back. He described it, he outlined it that, as long as these different races don't cooperate, this will never be a winnable game. It will never be a defeatable game. And I suspected early on that, you have Kurito, who is a Spriggan, and you have Lifa, who is a Sylph. Well, right there, you have teamwork of two different races. Maybe that's the key to beating this game and saving Asuna and those other 300 people, whom we haven't heard much about in the last couple episodes. So it's, something we need to remind ourselves that Asuna is not the only person they need to save. There's 300 others. And so it's just amazing to me. I mean, we're 19 episodes in. We're in a whole new arc with ALO, and it's just become as compelling as many parts of SAO that preceded it. And part of that is because who is the puppet master? I really desperately want to know. Sugo seems to be the likeliest candidate, and whether or not Sigurd is actually working with him and the Salamander forces are working with him remains to be seen, but I just think this is really fascinating that we have people actually within this game. They should be focusing on working together and beating it, yet you have these people set in place to keep and maintain that divide and keep people warring instead. And again, what is the motivation? I really have to ask. I'm desperate to find out as these episodes unfold. And so yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on this one. It was just action-packed and exciting, ramped up my curiosity and just my intrigue, and I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. I know some people haven't been finding the last few ALO episodes that satisfying and stuff like that. I've still been enjoying it, but I do feel like this was a much needed, getting back to the focus of the story, as where the last couple episodes kind of sidetracked a little bit. But I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below, as usual, what you are thinking of SAO, the ALO arc, and if this episode ramped up your excitement the way it did for me. So otherwise, that's going to be pretty much it for me on this, and I'll catch you later. Peace.